Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, we will be doing a guide on how to play XIN ZHAO in Season 10. So this guide is mainly going to be designed for beginners. So beginners to either new to XIN ZHAO or new to playing jungle in general, or just want to see how to play XIN ZHAO in the new jungle in Season 10 with the new camp XPs and all that good stuff. So with that out of the way, let's just get right into the video. Okay, so before we load into the game and look at how to actually play the game, let's do your rune setup. So the rune setup for XIN ZHAO, the biggest thing that is most important is to have Hail Blades. There are some other couple of rune setups that you can run that are a little bit more fun and stuff like that, but Hail Blades is going to be your bread and butter keystone most of the time. Some of the other minor runes are pretty whatever, like the second row. You can take either Cheap Shot or Sudden Impact. Either one's fine. Any of the third row one is fine. But the other ones that are very, very, very important is taking Relentless Hunter on your bottom row on your domination tree. So Relentless Hunter is super, super important on a lot of junglers, especially on early game ganking junglers. It's very important to be able to maneuver around the map. And once you get 2 kills or so, or be a part of 2 takedowns, you can actually just outpace people in the jungle so fast because XIN ZHAO is so good at ganking and is so good at actually clearing his jungle as well. So you'll just be able to move around the map just way better. So that rune is really important. You really don't need the other runes at all. You can take Ravenous if you want to. That can make some of your fights a little bit better, but XIN ZHAO is already a pretty efficient duelist, so just take Relentless Hunter. It's so good. The other thing that's going to on your precision tree, something that's very important is Triumph is always nice, but the big rune that's very important is the Tenacity rune. So you're stacking Tenacity rune on the second row is super important, especially if anybody has CC. XIN ZHAO is a pretty one-dimensional champion for the most part. So once you have a bunch of CDR, you can kind of hop around fights a little bit more. But if you get locked down in CC, you feel extremely useless on XIN ZHAO. So if the enemy has any the kind of code that I use, if they have 2 champions that have hard CC, if they have at least 2 champions, which isn't very many, if they have at least 2 champions, I always take this rune. And I would advise other players to always take that rune. If they have only 1 champion with hard CC, you can get away with taking the Alacrity tree or the Bloodline tree. It's also fine. Usually you don't really need them, but I'll take them if like the enemy team has no CC on their team. Then there's no reason to take Tenacity, and you could just take the Tenacity rune setup and build tabbies or whatever you want. And then obviously the little runes at the bottom. You're always going to take attack speed in the jungle on almost every single champion. So XIN ZHAO is no different. And then you take the adaptive damage and armor. Armor is super good in the jungle. If you don't know, it helps you get through your jungle camps pretty healthy. The only time I would take something different there if I took MR, because XIN ZHAO already is super healthy in the jungle. Sometimes I'll take MR if they have like 4 AP champions on the enemy team, or the side of the map I want to play on is all AP champions, and I may take the MR rune there. Now we're going to be looking at the item builds. So I have a little graphic pulled up to show you the item builds. So you're always going to start Machete on XIN ZHAO, so that should just be known. You'll start XIN ZHAO, You'll start Machete, Refillable, and your regular Warding Totem. On your first vac, usually I switch out my Warding Totem for my Sweepers. Mainly because XIN ZHAO, his biggest strength as a champion is his ability to get early game ganks off, and so Querying Vision can be very efficient. And so I normally on my first back I buy that and I buy a Pink Ward, and I switch out my ward setup. But anyways, the core build is going to be your Warrior Enchantment with your Skirmishing Saber, not the blue smites. You want to take a red smite. XIN ZHAO is a skirmisher, so you want to take the Skirmisher Saber almost all the time. One of the big strengths of XIN ZHAO is that he can duel almost every single jungler in the game. There's a couple junglers that he can't duel, or a couple junglers that it's just a little bit more difficult for him to duel. So always want to take Skirmisher Saber. And then for your boots, you can either take Tabbies or Mercs, just really depending on the game. You want to take Triforce second item every single time. The only time you do want to skip Triforce is if you're just incredibly behind. It's okay to skip Triforce and you're just going to be a meat shield for your team. But the Triforce just keeps it to where you're actually still really powerful in the mid game. So you're actually pretty strong in the mid game, and if you don't have that Triforce, it's going to be difficult for you to keep on pace. But if you're already way out of pace, it's okay to skip that item, but 99% of the time you want to build Triforce second and then Sterak's third. The only time you don't build Sterak's third is if you're snowballing super hard and you want to get like an early GA, and you can continue to snowball, or you can build some more situational items for snowballing. But 99% of the time, this is going to be your 3 item build plus your boots is right here. looking at more of your or items that are good in most situations, we have the GA is going to be good in most situations. I build this either third or fourth item almost every single game. Randuin's is super good depending on if the enemy team has 2 crit champions. Randuin's is going to be great, or their scaling champion. The enemy has a Yasuo. Randuin's is going to be awesome. I didn't put Thornmail on here, but Thornmail is a good item if it's applicable. Spirit Visage is very good with Xin Zhao's passive, so that's a good item that I sometimes build after Sterex or even before Sterex, depending on the game, if it makes sense. And then we have Deadman's, and then we have the Purple Mask. That is going to be the Abyssal Mask is going to be super good for, or not Abyssal Mask, Adaptive Helm. Sorry, the Purple Helmet. Sorry. Is going to be super good. So all these items can be really well, because in the late game, honestly, Xin Zhao is not super great. Sometimes if you're snowballing hard enough, you can keep on pace. But if the game gets to where everybody's level 18, you are a frontline champion, so you need to have your last couple items be more of a frontline items. Situational items, we have the Death's Dance, which I will sometimes build if I'm snowballing. It's more of just a fun item build. You can build a Death's Dance, and you can build a Death's Dance and a Gargoyle Stoneplate, and you can do a lot of damage while being like a pseudo tank, because you have the bleed passive from the Death's Dance, and then you can pop Stoneplate when you go for the full-on engage. After you do your combo, you can pop Stoneplate, and you can stay pretty healthy. Obviously, we have the Maw here as a situational item if we have high AP. If you build the Maw, remember you cannot build Sterex. The passives do not stack. And then we have Mercurial Scimitar or QSS. The QSS is what builds into it. You want to take this if the enemy has a high CC and you're used to using QSS. If you're not very good at using your QSS, if you're just a new player and you're not super good at it, then practice with it in some normal games, stuff like that. Practice building Merc Sim and using your QSS, using item actives. Really practice that if that's an issue that you're having before you want to just build this item a lot of times. But I build this item a lot, especially if there's a lot of CC on the enemy team. Okay, example full build. So our example full build that your cookie cutter build that you could build every game and it would be fine. Might not be the most item efficient build to build every single game, but if you built this build, it'd be fine. So you have Merc Boots, Warrior, Triforce, Sterex, GA, and a Spirit Visage. That item build will be fine almost every single game. But remember, you do want to adapt your build to what's going on in the game, and that's what you want to do on any champion. And Xin Zhao is pretty cool because he has a lot of adaptable items that you can plug and play, because he has those tank, he has those damage items that you can mess around with. But this is a good example build. If you built this every game, you'd be doing all right. Okay, we're quickly going to talk about his abilities. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on his abilities. They're really straightforward. His E is a dash. I'm going to talk about his E first. That's the skill that you want to start. Your E is a dash that also grants you attack speed. Your E is a dash that grants you attack speed. Your Q is an empowered auto attack and an auto attack cancel. So whenever you dash in, if you Q and then auto attack cancel with your Q, which we're going to talk more about combos at the end of the video, if you dash in and do your Q auto attack cancel on your Q, that's a really quick way to do that. And the new Hell Blades, that'll let you stack that up really fast. So it buffs your auto attacks, and then the third auto attack on your Q will grant a knockup. The other ability the other big ability is your W. Your W, you slice your blade in front of you. So you slice in front of you, dealing damage to the champions that are right in front of you in a cone, and then you stab forward. It's Xin Zhao's only skill shot, and it's going to be the ability that you max first. So you'll take E first, and then you'll take Q second in the jungle. And we'll talk more about that in a second. You'll take Q second in the jungle, and then you'll take your W at level 3. But that's going to be the ability that you max. So you're going to max your W, and then you'll max your Q. If you end up maxing your E second, that's also okay. But usually you want to match your Q second for maximizing damage output. Okay, and your ultimate, what your ultimate does is you swing your blade around and you in a circle, and it deals a flat base damage that isn't that super strong. It does a flat base damage to all enemies hit, and it does a percentage of their current health. So it does more damage the higher the health is of the target at that time when you hit them. The other thing that's important is once you use your Audacious Charge, which is your E, or you auto attack a champion, it'll mark them, and they will not get knocked back by your ultimate. So for example, when you go in on a fight, if you land on their carry, you E onto their carry, you can instantly ult. It'll still hit the carry, but they won't move, and everybody else will be knocked away, so you can 1v1 the carry in that short amount of time that everybody's knocked away. The other thing that it does is that big circle that's going to be around your champion is any champions that are outside of those circles, whenever they try to hit you with damage, it will not apply. So even for stuff like Brand's burn, when Brand has his passive on you, if you have your ult up and Brand is outside of that range, even though the passive is already on you, the passive will not deal damage to you because Brand is outside of the circle. In order for him to deal damage to you, he has to be inside of the circle. The other thing that's important to talk about the abilities is the Q. Is every time you hit anything with your Q, it reduces cooldowns on all your other abilities, including your ultimate. So if you go in, you use your ultimate. I use my ultimate on cooldown. Don't hold on to your ultimate in fights, or don't hold on like when you go for a fight and you're like don't want to use your ultimate in this fight. You can re-get it up so fast if you know you're going to be able to farm some of your camp. So I use it constantly. Every opportunity that it makes sense for me to use it, I use it because you can get your ultimate back up super fast. It's a short cooldown and it's reduced with your Q. We'll talk more about how to actually do your combos in a little bit, but that's the super important stuff right there. Okay, let's talk about your actual jungle path now. So your jungle path. You always want to do XIN ZHAO excels at doing the single target camps. So a good key to note, you can just start on either side of the jungle that your bot lane is on. I mean, a lot of people go by this rule where they just start on their bot lane so they get a better leash. So you can never go wrong with doing that. I'll talk about starting on the other side of the map in just a second because there is some cool things you can do with Zen. But if you end up just starting on the bottom side of the map, let's say you're on the bottom side, which is going to be which is actually called the blue side team. So if you're the blue side team, then you're going to be starting on red buff, right? And that's great. That's XIN ZHAO's best camp. Then you'll just start red buff, and then you'll go Gromp in blue. That gives you a great level 3, and you can look for a top side gank. Or if there's not a gank there, you can just path back towards bottom, do your scuttle, and look for a mid gank or a bottom gank. So you can get a really quick level 3 like that, and XIN ZHAO loves doing the single target camps. If there's not a play that you think you can make on the top side of the map, you could just do more of a clear style. You could just do red, wolves, blue, Gromp, scuttle crab. Look for a play somewhere. If you can't get it, just reset and then look for a play bottom side and do those sides of the camps. That's fine too. Alternatively, if you're on the other side of the map, you can start your blue buff. You can do blue buff. So you're on the red side. You're the red side team. You can do blue buff, Gromp, red buff, look for a play top side. And that's going to be great because you're going to have your red buff up for the entire gank duration that you want to do. Or, alternatively, you can just do blue, Gromp, wolves, red, and you'll clear more camps, then do scuttle and look for ganks around top and mid. That's also an option that you can do. On XIN ZHAO, he's so healthy in a jungler. He really doesn't even need a leash a lot of the time. So starting top side and getting a top lane leash is perfectly fine on Zen. And usually the only time I would do that is if I know I want to path towards bottom, or I want to get my red buff and make sure I get a level 2 gank. So it's very important before you gank with XIN ZHAO, you do want to have red buff, in the early game at least. Red buff is just so powerful. You want to have that burn damage to apply the slow and to apply the burn damage when you look for ganks. And as I said before, XIN ZHAO excels at doing ganks, right? So XIN ZHAO has a cool thing because he's one of the few jungle champions that is actually really, really strong at level 2. So most champions need to get level 3 in order to get their ganks off, like Hecarim, stuff like that. Need to get level 3 before they get their ganks off, but XIN ZHAO is one of the few champions like him and J4 that can actually get a lot of stuff done at level 2. So a path that you can do all the time if you want to is you can start red buff and then look for a gank mid. Okay, before you decide I'm gonna level 2 gank mid, because I love every opportunity I can, I do it because it throws people off and it's great. And it's not cheese because this is an efficient play style for XIN ZHAO. The only time you want to look for that though is you got to do a couple things before you actually look for that play. So you got to make sure that you actually have the ability to get something done in the mid lane. So what I mean by that is you need to make sure your mid lane champion is somebody who can do something at level 1. So for example, let's say you have a Galio versus Yasuo matchup and you have the Galio on your team. That's great. So you just communicate to your Galio, hey, I'm going to level 2 gank you, so start your taunt, start your W. And it's going to be simple enough because Yasuo is a melee champion. He won't even have to use his flash to get into range. You tell him you're going to level 2 gank, you ping that you're on the way. As soon as you kill your camp, Galio's still going to be level 1, Yasuo's still going to be level 1. When Yasuo goes for his CS, you can just wait there. Galio will taunt him. You go in. You get a free kill. That's going to be a kill 99% of the time, or at the very least, you'll burn their summoners, or you'll trade summoners and get a kill. But if your mid laner is someone like Kassadin, the chance of that play working out is so little that you're not going to be that the risk reward isn't very good. So that a champion like Kassadin, I'm gonna silence him. I don't know if that does for you. So that'd be a time I wouldn't look for a level 2 play mid. And the other thing that's important about that, you need to communicate that to your team that that's what you're going to do, so they can take the appropriate skill to be able to help you. Okay, the reason why I said just mid lane is okay is because the risk reward for ganking mid lane and it not working out is actually a really good ratio. So as I said, XIN ZHAO's query that you want to do is you want to do, let's say you started red buff, then you want to go to your other side of the map anyways to do your blue and your gromp. So if you ended up starting your red buff, let's say you're on the top side of the map, you started your red buff and you go for a level 2 gank mid, and the play doesn't work out, then you can just walk through the lane. You're already walking towards the camps you want to do. You want to do your blue next. So you can do your blue and your gromp, and you really don't waste all that much time. You're going to waste like 5 to 10 seconds, which in the grand scheme of things, if the chance of that play working is pretty good a lot of the times. So if it doesn't work out, you lost 5 to 10 seconds. That's not too awful, and you're already moving in the direction that you want to go. But if you're doing those ganks on the side lane, so let's say you start your red buff and you're on the bottom side and you go for a bot lane gank and the gank doesn't work out, it takes 15 seconds to set up and it just doesn't work. Now you're so far away from the camps that you want to do, you're going to end up having to do your Krugs, which is not a super bad camp for XIN ZHAO to start in the early game. But that leaves the opportunity for the enemy jungler to get a huge farm advantage because you're doing your inefficient camps. They can do their efficient camps, and then they can invade your top side and do the camps that you want to do, and you get 3 buffed. Or the enemy can just power farm through top side and then gank the top lane, and he has a whole level advantage on you for the rest of the game. So that can be very difficult. The only time you want to look for level 2 plays on the side lanes is if it's super free. So for example, if the enemy team somehow burn their flashes on their bottom lane at level 1 and your bottom lane still has their flashes and you have your flash, and let's say you have a Leona and she started a Q, those ganks are so free you're going to get a double kill. So it's worth you losing that. It's worth the risk of you losing your entire top side and getting a level behind, because if you get those kills, you're going to get the XP, you're going to get your bottom lane super far ahead, and you can start to just snowball around that side of the map. So that's the only time where that really makes sense to do that. Okay. All right, so let's talk about how to play the mid-late game as XIN ZHAO. So if you're snowballing super hard, you can be a real carry threat in the mid game. So in the mid game, once you have your Triforce, you actually have a big threat of just one-shotting people in team fights. You, most of the time, do not want to be the primary engage. You want to be the secondary engage. So let's say you have like a Malphite on your team. You want them to engage, and then you engage on the carry afterwards, or get some good flanks and knock the enemy team into your team. So most of the times you want to be the secondary engage. You want to act as like a pseudo frontliner, because in the mid game you deal a lot of damage, but your ultimate can make you actually pretty tanky. So that's how you want to play out fights. You want to isolate their carry and kill them in fights and act as a pseudo frontliner. If you're the only frontliner on your team, it's going to be very difficult for you to be primary engaged. So you might just have to play peel duty for your team. So whenever the enemy goes on, you just whip people away. And if you have a strong carry, you can just play peel for that carry. If your team doesn't have a very strong front line, then you can just protect your team. Sometimes you get in some weird situations where you have to be the primary engage. That's no fun to be a XIN ZHAO player, but have to be the primary engage, but sometimes it happens. And so you might just have to be the person who jumps into on a carry and whips everybody away, and hopefully you whip some good targets into your team. Or you can look for flanks and you can do flash Rs and knock the enemy team into your team, and that can work out as well. In the late game, you are mainly just a frontliner. You're not really a damage threat. If you get to the late game, enemy carries are just going to outdamage you a lot of the time. Sometimes you can end up soloing them if you play better than them, or you're just way stronger than them. But if you get to the late game where everybody's at full build, you're a frontliner, so you want to make sure you have those frontline items to be able to act as a frontliner. You can still deal quite heavy damage, but you're going to be a secondary frontliner for the rest of the game at the late game. If you're trying to hard carry on XIN ZHAO, you don't want the game to get that late usually. It's difficult to play XIN ZHAO in the late game. He's still a good team fighter, He's still a good team fighter, but it's hard for you to be the primary carry of fights. Okay, let's talk about some counter matchups. So XIN ZHAO, he's a skirmishing jungler, so by nature he doesn't really have that many counter matchups. But champions, when I say counter matchups, counter matchups are kind of weird, but we're going to talk about champions that can beat you in the 1v1. So some champions that can actually beat you in 1v1 in the early game are champions like Olaf, because he beats every champion in the early game. Lee Sin can get kind of tricky. If you end up dodging the Q, you'll win every single time. But usually at level 3, he has to hit you with 2 Qs in order to kill you. If you have red buff, then it'll take him 2 Qs in order to kill you. So do not run. You just got to dodge the second Q. If you don't dodge the second Q, the margin of error is really small and you'll end up dying. Some other champions that can be difficult to fight. Those are really the main champions that are going to be difficult to fight in the early game. Just if there's an Olaf, you can't fight him. Champions like Udyr, it's hard to fight him. If he takes press the attack, it's hard to fight those types of champions. A champion like Jax is hard to fight because he can just nullify your knockup. You got to hold your knockup for whenever he gets done with his counter strike. Those can be some difficult things. Some other champions that sometimes they'll feel bad. If you're not playing XIN ZHAO and you're not getting stuff done, farming junglers can sometimes feel bad, but I always pick XIN ZHAO into farming junglers. If I see the enemy team is running like a Shyvana or something like that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have free reign of the early game and I'm going to snowball something. But the drawback if somebody has like a Shyvana or a Karthus or something like that is that if you don't get the stuff done early, then those matchups can start to feel really bad because then they're going to outscale you, they're going to beat you in 1v1, and they're going to be a monster once they get level 6. Or champions like Evelynn, stuff like that. Usually when people pick those champions, I'm like, boom, I'm going to go to work. But if you don't get that stuff done, your just early plays don't work out, then those matchups start to feel super, super bad. Okay, we're going to show a couple combos here. So the first combo I'm going to show you is going to be the one you want to use whenever you're farming your jungle. So you're going to start with your E, you're going to do your W, auto, and auto cancel your Q. So it'll look something like this. All right, and the reason why you want to do that is because it offsets your, because every time you hit something with a Q, it makes your W cooldown less, and you can utilize both sides of the W. Sometimes I'll also go for this type of thing to aggro the minion, and then you can auto cancel cleanly on your Q. Okay, now whenever you're looking for plays on a jungle gank, a lot of times it's going to be the combo that you'll look for is you're going to E in, auto cancel your Q, so auto cancel your Q, and then W to apply the slow. The reason why you want to auto cancel your Q first is you want to make sure you get your third strike, and your W is going to help with you do that. And with the Hail of Blades passive, is it'll give you an extra Hail of Blades attack because you auto canceled, and then your W actually scales with attack speed on how it actually shoots as a projectile. So it looks something like this. Go like that. And then you can get that set up really fast. You can also, if you want to just go for full burst combo, you can go for something like this. So you can shoot your ultimate right before your Q does your knockup, and you'll get a big damage boost right there. The other thing I didn't talk about earlier when I was talking about when you're ganking people is if you can get behind an enemy champion whenever you're ganking them, you don't want to use your E first. You can just walk up to them. Start queuing them, apply the slow, and then knock them up is another way you can do this. The other thing I talked about is you don't want to prime your Q before you go in, because you won't get your Q auto cancel, which will cancel out kind of the buff that was put on Hail of Blades. Another thing that you can do is you can actually press your R, and while channeling you can flash. It's more of an advanced technique. It's a small window. It's kind of like Lee Sin's kick, but you can do something kind of like this. Is you can press your R and then flash, and so you can utilize that whenever let's say you're flanking the enemy team, and you can go in. And you can get a big knock-up, and you see it does a lot of damage if they're at full health right there. Alrighty. So those are all really the basic XIN ZHAO combos. XIN ZHAO is a pretty basic champion, pretty straightforward champion. He's one of my favorite champions in the game. That's why I'm using him as the very first guide I'm making on this channel, because I love XIN ZHAO. I'm a big XIN ZHAO advocate. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the video. I'm going to make him stop attacking. Thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you guys like this type of content. This is going to be the stuff I'm going to be making. I'm going to make educational content for solo queue. And then for you guys who love my pro play stuff, I'll still be making that, but it's just kind of the off season right now, so there's not a lot going on. But if you do like this type of content, this type of content you want, please consider subscribing. If you don't want to, that's fine too. I'm just here to make this stuff. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I love making this stuff, and I'm going to stop rambling. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.